with the road and the interpreters, with Kongi's harvest. It is Flora Nwapa that I read with the Furu. It is Chinua Achebe that I read with Things Fall Apart, No Longer at Ease, Antilles in the Savannah. It is Eleki Amadi that I read with The Concubine. Today, when I travel across Africa and I ask, do you know Chinua Achebe? Do you know Wole Soyinka? No, they don't. What happened to us? When I read history, we were taught about Nnamdi Azikiwe, and we called him even in Nairobi, Kenya, Zik of Africa. We were taught about Sir Ahmadu Bello, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Obafemi Awolowo. Later we learned about Olusegun Obasanjo. Agui Ronzi, whether you like them or not is a different debate, but we were taught them. Today, you go to the capitals of Africa, you go to Benin, and you ask the Beninois, who is the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 8 out of 10 do not know and perhaps do not care. What became of us? Why is it? Last week, there was the United Nations General Assembly. Even when the President of the United States of America was insulting everybody, African leaders sat there. But when their fellow African head of state is talking, they are busy doing other things. Who cast us? Who bewitched us? These are the uncomfortable questions that we must ask here. We have been too nice to each other for too long. The net effect is that if you go into any African environment, if you go to any African school and you ask young men and women, do you want to leave Africa? 9 of them want to run away. That is why they are dying in the Mediterranean Sea. That is why they are dying off the coast of Senegal. That is why they are being humiliated at embassies. You go to the embassy of any Western country, in any African country, and you'll see the humiliation. They ask you, even your great-great-grandmother, who died long before you were conceived as an idea. Those are the circumstances in which we find ourselves. On average, many of you who are present here, allow me to be morbid, in the next 40 years, you'll be upstairs. The question is, what are you leaving for your children and children's children? What is it? These are the questions. These are the uncomfortable questions that we must ask. And these questions must be answered by Nigeria primarily. I've said not once, not twice, but times without number, that the day Nigeria wakes up, that is the day Africa wakes up. You know, a friend of mine once told me, if you go anywhere in the world, and you do not find a Nigerian, run out of that place. There is nothing there. And those of you who have had occasion to travel, you go to different parts of the world, you look for the best doctors, Nigerian. Look for the best engineers, Nigerians. Look for some of the best lawyers, Nigerians. The Nigerians are everywhere doing great things across the continent of Africa. And whenever Nigeria has decided to provide leadership, Africa has changed. You ask the Liberians with ECOMOG. When Nigeria stood up, that country was stabilized. When there was mischief in Banjul in the Gambia, and Nigeria stood up, that country was stabilized. When Nigeria did not do as well as she should have done in the Sahel, the problem is not stabilized. The question is, why is Nigeria a reluctant leader? Nigeria should be the leader economically. You know, when Nigerians say, and they debate with South Africa, and sometimes with Egypt, which is the biggest of the economies, I laugh. I laugh because the economies that they are talking about using the unreliable GDP, but we must use it, is that Nigeria is 500 billion USD GDP with a population of over 200 million. Singapore, which is smaller than Lagos, with a population of 6 million, has a GDP of 564 billion. So the debate between Nigeria and Egypt and South Africa is a debate between two dwarfs as to which one is the taller of them. Even if one is taller than the other, they are still dwarfs. The day that I will celebrate Nigeria is the day Nigeria tells me we are 2 trillion economy. And Nigeria can achieve it. And Nigeria must achieve it. What does Nigeria not have? Is the oil that is produced in Nigeria different from the oil that is produced in Saudi Arabia? Is it different than the oil that is produced in Kuwait, that is produced in Bahrain, that is produced in Qatar? Why must Nigeria not be the leader that has pipelines across the continent of Africa? Why can she not do it? She can. But we have allowed ourselves to be paralyzed by analysis and to be paralyzed by lamentation. It is your own kinsman, Chinua Achebe, who said that adversity is a problem of humanity, but we must never allow ourselves to be the victims or the agents of adversity. We must allow ourselves to be the conquerors of adversity, Chinua said. And I remember so very vividly in 1983 when Chinua Achebe wrote the little book, The Trouble with Nigeria, and he simply said that the problem with Nigeria, and he there said the rest of Africa is simply and squarely one of leadership. And his leadership at all levels. Many times we think that politics is the only side of leadership. No. Leadership is at all levels. Why can't you, if you've run this beautiful club for 82 years and run it well, why can't that be upscaled and replicated in every other sector of Nigeria? Why? Why is it that in this micro environment, you do not care who is who in this club? Everybody has a sense of esprit de corps, a sense of camaraderie. You do not care from which ethnicity you come from. But when you want to run the club that is Nigeria, you now talk tribe, you now talk religion. Why? These are the uncomfortable questions that you must confront, because if you do not confront them, then Nigeria and Africa will continue to punch below her weight. I'm suggesting to you that the time is now that we must ask ourselves what it is that we can do. We have lamented for too long. Let us now ask ourselves what it is that Nigeria can do in the area of education. You know, many of you who are present in this assembly may be described as upper middle class or the top class. You are the best of the best. You are the crème de la crème of Nigeria. And when you are the crème de la crème of Nigeria, it means you are also the creme de la creme of Africa. But the question is, does Africa feel you? Does Africa feel you in the area of education? You know, not so long ago, I was at an African university. And at that university, they said that their greatest desire was that they wanted to be like Harvard and Cambridge. And I said, why do you want to be like Harvard? Why do you want to be like Cambridge? Why can't you not just be you? One of the things that we Africans must do is to exercise the ghost of low self-esteem and to wear the spirit of self-belief. The day we do that, that is the day that Africa will begin to grow. One of the things that gladdens my heart when I come to Africa, to West Africa, and particularly to Nigeria, is the manner in which the Nigerians dress. It gives one authenticity. It gives one confidence. But the question that I ask, are the clothes made in Nigeria? And if they are not made in Nigeria, it means the jobs are not in Nigeria. We have exported all our jobs to China. I'm asking us that if Africa and Nigeria is to be resuscitated to realize our potential, I want to see Nigeria grow in higher education. The other area in which Nigeria must provide leadership is in the area of the economy. You know, not so long ago, Nigeria was just about to provide leadership once again. And there was going to be a currency in this region called the eco. And we were all happy, those of us who love the continent of Africa. We were looking forward to the day when you would come here and I would have the eco, not the dollar. Something happened. I'm asking you who are shakers and movers. Shake those who are in government. Honorable Governor, Deputy Governor, ask yourself, 20 years from today, when you are no longer governor and history is written about you, what will they say? What will they say of your watch? What did you deliver? What did your administration deliver? History is harsh. It passes verdict that is without emotion. I'm asking all of us who are present here to ask those uncomfortable questions in the area of the economy. I'm asking those of us who are here to ask in the area of health. Why is it that young Africans are still dying of diseases that were conquered by Europe 100 years ago? What is happening to us? Why is it that when we have COVID, we have to import things from China? What became of our pharmaceutical industries? What became of our research institutes? Why do we pay our academics a pittance, peanuts, while our thieves thrive? Why? These are the questions that we must ask. We are talking at a time when we are talking about the Africa Agenda 2063 and Africa Continental Free Trade Area. What are we going to trade in if we are not manufacturing? A friend of mine whom I met when I was being brought to this site, former military general, as we were moving, for some reason he said about electricity, that electricity in Nigeria is epileptic. And it is epileptic indeed. Not only in Nigeria, everywhere. There is not a single place that you travel to Africa in today and you are in a hotel room, within 1 hour electricity has gone. Electricity is not rocket science. But for some reason, we are unable to supply stable electricity. Who cast us? Who bewitched us? That we cannot do what must be done. These are the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it ought to be celebration. But how can I speak the language of a wedding at a funeral? I refuse to do so. And I'll not speak for too long either, because the issues that I'm raising are known. They are known because they have been spoken about. They are known because your former leaders have spoken about them. If you look at the writings of your former presidents, the statements of your politicians, the writings of Olusegun Obasanjo in his book, My Watch, he says, among other things, that potential is nothing if it is not realized. I look at the early statements of Sir Ahmadu Bello, the early statements of Obafemi Awolowo, the early statements of MKO Abiola, the early statements of the two Ojukus, the father and the son. And I ask myself, what can we do now? And I know what we can do. The first thing that we must do today to commemorate the 65 years since Nigeria regained independence is for Nigeria and Nigerians to make a solemn resolve that is no longer business as usual. That from today on, Nigeria is going to provide leadership. That she's going to provide leadership in the economic arena. That we are going to hear more Nigerians talk about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. That we are going to hear Nigerians talking about the diversification of the economy. That we are going to hear Nigeria talk about agriculture. That we are going to hear Nigeria saying that we are no longer going to import our chicken from Brazil. That we are no longer going to import our rice from Pakistan. That we are no longer going to have on our tables anything called English tea. That we are no longer going to have Nescafe on our table. That we are no longer going to import palm oil from Malaysia, that we are going to diversify our economy, that we are going to revive our leather industry, that we are going to revive our industry so that we can create jobs here, that Nigeria is going to be open space for the rest of Africa, that Nigeria is not going to ask for visas, that Nigeria is not going to ask me for a landing pass when I come to Nigeria. How can the mother country ask me for a landing pass? That Nigeria is not going to ask me for visas when I come here. This is our Mecca, so to speak, and we should be able to come here without any hindrance whatsoever. Nigeria must do that if the continent of Africa is to realize our potential. And I'm suggesting that you must also open up your education. Our young men and women who are going to study in Europe and America, if there were no ASU strikes, we would be coming to Ibadan. We would be coming to Nsukka. We would be coming to the Lagos School of Business. We have enough intellectuals to make us come here. And you can make the money through education. I'm suggesting that you can do that. I'm also suggesting that your airline must now be revived. Nigeria cannot be a country without an airline. How can it be? It can be done. There are many Nigerians. When I see Air Peace, when I see Air Ibom, I know that it can be done. This is the time for it to be done. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish not to speak for too long. Let me now move toward the conclusion, because conclude I must. We are at a difficult time in Africa. And that time can only be resolved if we make a solemn resolve. Today, we must remember the words of those who are in the forefront of leadership. Today, I remember the words of a great South African, a man who you must know, Pixley Kaisa Kaseme. Speaking in the year 1906, he said that Africa must be regenerated. And I'm suggesting that it is Nigeria that must be in the forefront of the regeneration of Africa. I'm also hearing it being said in 1957, on the 6th day of March 1957, the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah said that the independence of Ghana meant nothing. Today I'm saying that the new liberation of Africa will only happen if Nigeria is in the forefront. I'm urging you, you movers and shakers, go out there and move and shake the political leadership so that they are able to do that which is good and right. You have the ability, because if you don't do it, history will judge you harshly. Lastly, I want to conclude with these words of James M. Kwejiragri of Ghana, who said that we are eagles, but we have been fed on chicken feed for too long. Let us today abandon chicken feed. Let us become eagles that we may fly. We are lions who have had the taste for rats for too long. The time is now that we must reacquire the taste for antelopes. Only then will our lionhood be manifest. And I conclude with these words of Wole Soyinka, that a tiger does not shout about his tigritude. You follow the path of a tiger and you see a duiker dead and you know that some tigritude has emanated from there. So go out there and be what you must, lions. Go out.